Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating, it's Saturday, September 29th, 2018. In both the Lynn life and the Jamie Body Mind, the authorized souls remain only child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions, and all other souls from all other dimensions, as long as the souls are already living by the many rules given to the search for truth community by wiser minds above all of us. And those rules include making a concerted effort to face forward, not backward on the life path, and to be pointed up rather than hanging like a bat from our life path.
That's true.
And this is really a challenge in this era where the astral currents are flowing very strongly into the past and upside down.
That's
and so
true.
Unless we are making repeated efforts to align with forward and up, we by default, by not doing anything, we are hanging upside down from our life paths like bats.
That's
and
true.
Facing backwards. And it's like being in the doorway of two rooms, and in one room is that thing that we're supposed to do, but we aren't looking at that room, we're looking at the other room.
That's
and
true.
We don't know if anybody has ever had that experience, but it's very difficult to tell what it is we're supposed to do when we're looking at the wrong room. But when we turn around and face the room that has that thing that we're supposed to do in it, we say,
Oh,
and here I was going to vacuum.
that's right.
There's the vacuum cleaner,
That's right.
etc. Right now, the era of inconvenient reality is upon us, and that means the future is challenging for all of us. We're all spiritual beings having an experience of sentience in a denser dimension for the most part
That's
than
true.
the dimension in which the plans were made for that experience of sentience.
That's true.
And it's harder than we thought it was going to be, and this is the universal experience in the largest meaning of that word, meaning that this is how it is for all of us. We've not observed any sentience in any dimension that doesn't plop into the dimension, think about their life path ever so briefly and say, that's impossible.
That's true.
No, that's way too hard. What's an easier option?
That's true.
And we start to play small in the game of life, and this is when our lives go off track. Immediately. And now that the bad choices have been made so continually by so many for so long,
That's true.
all options are difficult. But it doesn't mean that they have to lack joy. Think about how boring easy games are and how fun challenging games are. Actually, all that needs to happen is that we change our thinking and say, this is fun, and it is fun. It does
That's
become
true.
fun to find what about it is enjoyable. Choose to think of it as a game and say, I don't intend to be a loser. I intend to succeed at this game.
That's
and
true.
then do it like we mean it. Do it like our hair is on fire. And then life is fun and joyful. Until we go back to what the soul plan is, to what the commitment is, the sacred vows to spirit and to other presences in our lives, until we go back to the soul plan, it's really impossible to say what any of us are supposed to be doing at any point in time.
That's true.
And without going back to the soul plan, we have to say odds are darn good that we will not be doing anything that we're supposed to do, anything that will be evaluated upon when we exit this dimension, and that our rebirths are going to show the consequences, sadly, of jobs undone and promises unkept.
That's true.
And that none of us are likely to like that. So it's really important to evaluate our soul plans, keep them in. I said it wrong. It's not important for us to evaluate our soul plans. It's important for us to continually be aware, remind ourselves of what the soul plans are. The evaluations occurred before birth,
That's
and
true.
it's a very long process. And once you're in the life, you don't get to change.
That's true.
That's not how the system works. You said you would do it. You signed. They said, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? At least 3 times. We said, yes, yes, yes. And now it's time to do it. Now it's just time. It's go time. It's do it time. And the entire life, the entire sentience is go time and do it time.
That's true.
For all of us in all dimensions, no exceptions. Amen.
Well, that just got really quiet upstairs.
Yes. So to wiser minds above who are attempting to get oppositional defiant presences to do what they promised spirit they would do and do what they promised other loved ones they would do, it's tricky. It's a real challenge. How does one get an oppositional defiant life to do something other than what the situation does not call for? How does one get decision makers, for example, to do what the situation calls for rather than having oppositional defiant disorder to what the situation calls for? It's a real challenge. One thing that could work is to make it a game also.
That's
See
true.
if you can get the person to do it some way, somehow. Give them a little trick or treat kind of game. You know,
That's
just
true.
get them to do it. We know that beating them over the head with life circumstances doesn't work. We
That's
have
true.
clients who have really awful life situations.
That's true.
And they're still absolutely dug in their insistence they cannot possibly live their soul plan.
That's true.
So all of that kind of life abuse doesn't actually work. And it should motivate them to do what the situation calls for, and we agree that it should.
I hear you.
But it doesn't. When you have people who have disabling illnesses
That's true.
and disabled children and
That's true.
dead husbands, and they're still not doing it. Dead
That's
husbands
true.
who they loved and want to be with,
That's true.
not dead husbands who they're glad to be done with.
That's true.
And they're still not doing it. Then that's so sad.
That's true.
That's really sad, and it shows that it's a waste of time to give that much motivation to any one person. It just doesn't work.
Well, that's true.
Now what? So how to trick the person? We've got to make it fun for them to do
That's
what they're
right.
supposed to do. They've got to see an intersection of interest.
That's true.
And so you offer them some little tidbit or treat that gets them heading in the right direction, and then maybe they'll do what the situation actually calls for, kind of accidentally,
That's true.
or as a collateral action.
That's true.
And that's okay, and to view that as acceptable technique when it comes to wiser minds above, attempting to work with presences who have oppositional, defiant disorder to the soul plan. So in this era, we really think that that's the safer assumption. We think that 99.99% of presences have oppositional, defiant disorder to the soul plan.
That's true.
And that those who don't, it should stand out in some way or another. They should be doing things that are inconvenient
That's
to
true.
them, that is not comfortable.
That's true. That comes at personal cost.
They're paying a price to do the right thing. If
That's
somebody
true.
is paying a price to do the right thing, you can play it straight with them. And if they are not paying a price to do the right thing, then just make it a game and kind of trick them into doing what they said that they would do, so that when they die, as is inevitable, they don't get the book thrown at them.
That's true.
Just trick them into doing it. It's okay.
That's true.
In a nice way.
That's true.
And also there's this issue of confusion. So many people are
That's
confused,
true.
and there's so much bad information, especially about interdimensional issues. The information is almost universally incomplete or flawed or confused, and so people
true.
are drinking confusion and eating confusion, and then their thinking is a tangled mess.
That's true.
And so they make crazy choices that don't make sense because of all the confusions of interdimensional realities.
That's true.
We have a phrase for it here in this community. We call it good-hearted interdimensional misunderstanding, and we find that it occurs in all directions, from larger dimensions looking into smaller dimensions. It's really confusing and difficult. Just try to figure out why your cells are doing what they're doing and not doing what they aren't doing. Why is breathing such a problem? Why does the organism level have to focus on breathing? Because the cells are not doing it, because they too are organisms expecting their cells to breathe for them.
That's true.
Which are organisms expecting their cells to breathe for them. And we really all just need to stop living parasitically off our cells, and we take responsibility for breathing. Every me, every I, take responsibility for breathing. If there is an I or me to hear this, take responsibility for breathing, for ourselves and for the world around us. And just as looking from larger levels into smaller levels, there's a lot of misunderstanding and confusion. It's identical looking from smaller levels to larger levels. There's an equal amount of misunderstanding and confusion. And there's a lot of wishful thinking, of course, in both directions, but especially looking from small to big. We wish for those higher powers to be benevolent.
That's true.
And to consider our needs and not their own. And then when we compare it to our own thoughts about our own selves, we can see that that's just some kind of fantasy.
That's true.
Because most of us are still living parasitically, not even willing to breathe, which is a pretty darn basic function.
That's true.
Many people feed their bodies absolute junk. They don't exercise. They don't take responsibility for getting enough sleep.
That's true.
They're just treating their cells horrifically, and yet they expect a larger presence to treat them with benevolence, and that doesn't even make sense. That sounds like a fantasy. I'm sorry. And what we find actually is that we're all the same in all dimensions, and so it's okay for us to begin to take responsibility for our lives. And it starts with what we used to call the Sunday morning talk of level 1, which is don't put drugs into your system, don't drink alcohol, don't take antibiotics, don't take antihistamines unless it's really a crisis, and almost never is it actually a crisis.
Oh, that's true.
Almost always it's just something that makes it easier. Really, actually live clean. Sweat enough, do things that cause the body to sweat so that you're detoxing. Drink as close to a gallon of water a day as you can, and then sweat it out. Just as you should not put junk food into your body, you should not put junk food into your mind.
That's
and so
true.
really cut off the media as much as possible. Only that which is needed for work. Stop living frivolously. Detach from the capitalistic culture that says that shopping is good. Consumption isn't good. That's bad.
True.
Save your shekels and use them to put solar panels on your house.
That's true.
Live clean, in other words. That's what the Sunday morning talk of level 1 is about. And it's a 45-minute talk, so obviously you're not going to have to listen to the whole thing right now, and we assume you count yourselves lucky for that. But it is actually a formula for living successfully. And
That's
so if you wanted to look at that Sunday morning talk, it would be well worth your time.
That's true.
If you wanted to live successfully. It just depends what your goal is. But now, in order to evacuate the even deeper, denser dimensions, it's the only plan B that's been put on the table to create worlds that work in all dimensions and for all categories of sentience. And given the reality that this isn't a joke, this isn't a drill, actually all life is collapsing. We're watching it collapse around us in this dimension and in many other dimensions also, but this one is so observable as to be inarguable.
That's
and
true.
Yet people are still doing the wrong things. The decision makers are doing the wrong things, and each of us are decision makers in some way, shape, or form, and
That's
to
true.
not throw stones at the other decision makers until we too are making hard decisions for ourselves and for the world around us. It's go time. It's go time. Come on, what now in order to evacuate the even deeper, denser dimensions? Get out the smaller souls. Let them out. Let them get up to a lighter space. Let them get closer to places where truth is still valued, where integrity is still valued. And we're calling each other into our greatness and into fulfilling our destinies, and our sacred vows to Spirit are valued as loving, and where enabling has been let go of. Let's pump them up. And what difference does it make if you have to trick somebody into doing what they said they would do, then trick them into it? It's like tricking somebody into paying off their mortgage, and if they don't pay off their mortgage, their credit scores are trashed and they lose their house in foreclosure. So it's to their benefit to pay off their mortgage, so it's okay to trick them into paying off their mortgage.
That's true.
Pay their bills. It's the same. Don't be a spiritual deadbeat. And how to help those we love not be spiritual deadbeats. Maybe that's the point. How to help those we love not be spiritual deadbeats. I think that's what they're trying to say to you guys.
True.
Is don't you love your charges, and don't you want to help them not be spiritual deadbeats? And so to just be imaginative and engage with them like a game and just trick them into doing what they said they would do.
That's true.
Since they don't want to do it and they're dug in. Don't fight them. Just don't play it straight. They're dug in. You have to trick them into doing it. Make it fun. Make it a game. And to those of us who are responsible for our own lives, which is all of us, to begin to build some muscle of integrity. Start somewhere. Do something. Keep your word. Keep your commitment. Think before you speak. It's better than nothing. Really try to live with integrity.